And in this way, in just saying this, and in not saying this is that we have to impose one viewpoint over another, but that all seriously held viewpoints of different groups have to be respected, the teacher is imparting an even more important lesson, which is tolerance. 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 Important lesson, which is tolerance.
Things that once would raise an eyebrow nowadays wouldn't faze your brow or my brow. Today, if Lady Godiva should come along, men would say she's out of style. Her hair's a mile too long. Golden days, olden days are gone, gone, gone. In olden days, it went to stocking nose. Something shocking, now heaven knows. Anything goes. Good authors too, who once knew better words, now only use four-letter words, rotten prose. Anything goes. The world has gone mad today, and good's bad today. Black today is white today. The guys today that we prize today are just boys in men's clothes. What good's an urge that's unexpressible? Nature is irrepressible. Heaven knows anything goes.
And these days, pretty much anything does go, doesn't it? G'day everyone, Anattack76 here with some anxious Aussie commentary, and I just thought we'd keep on the theme of the UN and other such global entities and the manipulation of, well, the intergenerational manipulation that's going on, as I will demonstrate this evening, or this morning. It's actually nearly 2 o'clock in the morning here. So anyway, I copied this bit of a quote down we might start with. I'm not sure if this is correct, because from memory, it was 12 months ago. I've copied it off someone's post, so they may have paraphrased a bit. Cultural Marxists throughout the education, legal, media and politics have used their ideology to indoctrinate the young for decades. In May 1919, at Dusseldorf, Germany, sorry for my pronunciation there, the Allied forces obtained a copy of the Communist Rules for Revolution. First, corrupt the young, get them away from religion, get them interested in sex, make them superficial, destroy their resilience and restraint. Second, get control of all means of publicity, thereby get the people's minds off their government by focusing their attention on athletics, sexy books and plays and other trivia. Divide the people into hostile groups by constantly harping on at controversial matters of no importance. Destroy the people's faith in their natural leaders by holding them up to contempt and ridicule. Always preach true democracy, but seize power as fast and as ruthlessly as possible. Do this by encouraging government extravagance, destroy its credit, produce fear of inflation with rising prices and general discontent, foment unnecessary strikes in vital industries, encourage civil disorder and foster lenient and soft attitudes on the part of government towards this disorder. Sounds like things we've got going on. By specious argument, cause the breakdown of the old moral virtues, honesty, sobriety, confidence, faith in the pledged word and ruggedness. And finally, cause the registration of all firearms on some pretext with a view towards confiscating them and leaving the populace helpless. And my comment at the end of that was, we are in trouble. However, today we're just going to use it as a part of the information that I'm presenting here. So that was turn of the century. They're saying they need to get into the minds of the people and manipulate those. Let's move on to 1969. CECUS had been in operation for about 5 years. This is called A Psychiatrist versus a Priest on Sex Ed. CECUS still exists today. It is a resource that is used and recommended, depending on what you're looking at, in Australian curriculum items and on some of the union sites and things like that. So let us watch that little presentation.
What I think concerns many people is when people like Dr. Calderon, the leader in this field, will come out and write off all the Ten Commandments. Right away she leaves out the Catholics, the Protestants, and the Jews. She says, I don't believe in the old thou shalt not. So she's condoning adultery, she's condoning immorality and so on, but she just has a different standard. But I don't think she should impose those standards on the children of parents who do condemn adultery and so on.
Well, I think that's a misstatement of Mary Calderon's position. I think Dr. Calderon talks about the need for dealing with the relativism and the shifting value positions and the questioning and the commercialism of sex and what she considers the hypocrisy of the environment that children are raised in. But I don't think she wants to write off the Ten Commandments.
Well, Doctor, she said exactly this. I don't believe in the old thou shalt not anymore. Now, there's no way that you can get around that statement. She does not believe in that adultery is wrong. She doesn't believe in thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife and so on. She says, I don't believe in it. And, Doctor, it's not a misstatement. I'm saying this is exactly a quotation, in quotation marks. There's no way that you can say she doesn't mean what she said.
She's willing to dispense with or discard the old thou shalt not. Well, as a psychiatrist interested in child psychology and behavior, I would say that thou shalt nots tend not to be very effective. And in that sense, while I would like to retain the moral precepts of the past, I'd like to make them more poignant, more relevant, and more understandable. I think there's a reason why there are certain moral precepts, and I think that the thou shalt not approach, the scare approach, the don't do it or you'll get BD, or just like, brush your teeth or they'll fall out. These kinds of approaches simply don't work. The kids turn their backs on the adult generation, and again, I can't speak for Dr. Calderon, but it's my impression that she's looking for a way to bridge the generation gap, not to throw out the moral precepts. At least that's my position.
Well, don't you feel that, first of all, the vast majority of adults, you're familiar with adult society, the vast majority of married people do not practice adultery. These people do not want their children to practice immorality. And it seems to me an invasion of the rights of an individual child, an invasion of the parent's rights. If someone like Dr. Calderon goes on and says, well, it's perfectly all right.
Well, this has been going on for a long time. You only have to look on the drugstore bookshelves to find out advocacy of many things we wouldn't want our kids to do, including murder and mayhem. And even on television, that is, it may not be so stated, but I believe the message gets across. As I say, I don't think Mary Calderon condones or advocates adultery. I certainly don't. We know it does exist, however, in the society, and I think we have to find a way to talk to kids about some of these issues. And I don't think it's sufficient to say don't do it. I think we have to say to kids, well, look, I read about it in this magazine or this newspaper or this book, and what do you have to say about it, and why not adultery? Why not masturbation? Why not premarital sex? I think we have to deal with these questions. Now, at home, the parents have every opportunity to make their views clear, both through words and through example, and they should. I don't think that they can possibly be expert enough to give a good description of the function of the ovary and the testicle, to talk about the menstrual cycle, to talk about demography and population change, to talk about what is abortion, what are nocturnal emissions, and so on. That is, they may be able to. Some parents will be able to, but knowledge in the sexual area changes also, and this is why I feel that the school has to supplement home sex education. It should not supplant home values, but if the home values are reasonably well stated and reasonably well lived, I can't imagine that a school is going to overturn them.
Doctor, do you believe, as a proponent of sex education, the subjects that you've just mentioned, masturbation, premarital sex, and so forth, require on the part of a teacher in the process of instructing and training moral judgment?
There's no escaping that these are morally loaded areas, and in the sense that the teacher's judgment is involved, I would say that his or her judgment has to be one which recognizes the social mores of this society, and she can communicate to kids what these are. She also, or he, has to recognize that there are some violations of mores, and what does this mean? In other words, what brings a person to do what is wrong according to the society? And that finally, the teacher has to recognize that we're in a pluralistic society and that children from different homes, different backgrounds, different religions will have different viewpoints on certain matters, including masturbation, birth control, and abortion. So the teachers...
You're beginning to deal not only with moral ethical questions, but directly with religious questions, because there are, as you know, strong feelings and regulations and rules within religious communities in this country on these subjects.
Absolutely.
I think one of the problems that comes up here is the question of how is a teacher going to handle these things if, in fact, we're not going to establish moral standards in our schools? How can we then deal with these subjects without permeating the atmosphere of the classroom with one's personal views?
Well, it takes a good teacher, but the problem is no greater, in my estimation, than the problem of dealing with a vegetarian child in a class or a Christian Science child in a class when it comes to talking about meat as a food, or when it comes to talking about going to the doctor. One doesn't want to violate the tenets of the faith of a Christian Scientist in that instance. So when it comes to discussing birth control in a class and wanting to pay respect to not only Catholics but possibly Orthodox Jews who also have reservations about contraception, one simply has to say there are religious viewpoints that feel all artificial contraception is wrong. And in this way, in just saying this and in not saying this is that we have to impose one viewpoint over another, but that all seriously held viewpoints of different groups have to be respected, the teacher is imparting an even more important lesson, which is tolerance.
Tolerance, isn't that one of the favourite buzzwords they've got going today? Okay, so he's actually was one of the first directors of CECUS ever, which people in the US will recognise, and as I said, we use over here. So we might have a bit of a look at their, oops, wrong window, go to the Facebook one, there we go, that's better. Let's see what CECUS is up to these days, as they are still a driving force in sexuality education. So this, you can see that was where this came from. Make a pact today to actively call out and reject any white, cis, heteronormative approach to sexuality education that you come across. Oh dear, let's talk about cold sores. Well, that's pretty good. Yeah, we've got a bit of the Me Too movement going on. They actually say that their sex ed is not good enough. Okay, apparently Texas has gotten really transphobic in the last 12 months. So as you can see, very, very left-wing in here. This patchwork of laws and policies makes it really challenging to ensure that we have a consistent way of providing this education that young people need. I'm not a big fan of CECUS. I've been through their K-12 stuff, which is used as a resource in a lot of our sex ed stuff that you find available. So, as you can see, oh look, they're celebrating all these LGBT books for little kids and things like that. Anyway, that's not what we were going to look at. Let's go and have a look at some more UN quotes. This report originates from the International Workshop, The Role of Early Childhood Education for a Sustainable Society. In addition, it should incorporate learning to be compassionate and respect differences, equality and fairness as the world is increasingly interdependent and interconnected. It was suggested that instead of talking about the 3 R's, reading, writing and arithmetic, one should refer to the 7 R's for education for sustainable development: reduce, reuse, recycle, respect, repair, reflect and refuse. Encouraging scientific and technological literacy was also pointed out as a component to be included. Got to keep the drones working. Very true. Yes, you should always say yes. Never refuse another opinion. You could hurt somebody's feelings. The third thing is diversity was considered a key issue in thinking about early childhood education and contributes to sustainability. I love how their sustainability works into everything in the UN stuff. And was discussed extensively by the participants. In a globalising world where different nationalities and ethnicities increasingly live side by side, learning to respect and appreciate diversity should begin early through parents, community members and early childhood programs. Early education should help children acquire an identity firmly grounded in the culture closest to them while developing a sense of themselves as world citizens. One way to promote this is intercultural education. Now, I've just pulled a few other quotes out of this one. Raising provocative questions such as, what does it mean to be more instead of having more? What is enough? What is for all? He pointed to the necessity of changing our perspectives and ways of living if our societies were to become more sustainable. And they want to drill this into the kids, that their parents are wasteful and they've been using up the planet's resources, so therefore there's this massive emergency and they all need to pull together and sacrifice their self for the greater good. He said many paths could be taken and that in order that the right ones were taken, world citizens must be educated, well informed and uphold democratic values. I have a follower who's all over how democracy is used to bring us down, and I guess you're kind of seeing that with the flood of immigration in different countries, changing the voting demographic and the cultural demographic of different countries. The Child Rights Convention, this is the Swedish Ombudsman for Children, understanding their perspectives and encouraging their participation as adults, equal partners. She said that more efforts were needed in order to implement the United Nations Convention properly, e.g. children's participation in decision-making in schools, a central theme that they've already got going. She also stated the attitudes of children having equal rights as adults was more important than laws and money. There we go. And down at the bottom of this one, I've pulled out heaps of stuff. Anyone who follows me know I use my Facebook just to put anything I find interesting. A clear common message in the perspectives and definitions gathered from different international contexts is that the timeline encompasses several generations and that there is always a global perspective. Individual involvement and responsibility are also integral parts of the concept of sustainable development. The key principle is that economic, social and environmental conditions and processes are integrated into a whole and also includes opportunities to approach this whole from different directions. Education for sustainable development must start in early childhood. There was a strong consensus that educating for sustainability should begin very early in life. It is in the early childhood period that children develop their basic values, attitudes, skills, behaviours and habits, which may be long-lasting. Studies have shown that racial stereotypes are learned early and that young children are able to pick up cultural messages about wealth and inequality. And here we go with the boy-hating thing and things like that, where they're just trashing anything that goes against their... I don't even know how to classify it all because there's so many isms. As early childhood education is about laying a sound intellectual, psychological, emotional, social and physical foundation for development and lifelong learning. That's another one that they use throughout, is a lifelong learning. They want to be re-educating us throughout our whole lives. It has an enormous potential in fostering values, attitudes, skills and behaviours that support sustainable development, e.g. wise use of resources, cultural diversity, gender equality and democracy. And we're just going to have a look at some of their LGBT rights things now. Now, I believe this Vitae, oh, I can't pronounce his name, Muntaborn, whatever it is, has just quit and another guy has taken his place. Generally are volunteer positions, they're pro bono positions that people come in because they want to, which gives you an idea of the sort of activists and things that you might see there. Have I got that actually showing? Yes, I do. Oh, no, there we go. You can see all those big buzzwords there. Stereotyping, stigmatization, and ostracism are often the result of a non-liberal mind and non-peaceful behaviour currently witnessed by the proliferating hate speech, often rampant on media and social web networks, which fuels the antagonism steeped in homophobia, transphobia, and even human rights phobia. There's a new word for you. This is compounded by overemphasis on the binary approach to gender, sex, and inadequate integration of gender and sexual diversity in the educational setting and people's upbringing from a young age, which should open the door to a less binary or non-binary understanding. Awesome. Let's come down a bit. I have linked everything that I've actually read, so you can read all the reports. There's about 6 or 7, I think, all up that I actually went to. The structure granted by the laws is already there, and that counts for a lot of countries, and everybody knows it, including government representatives, but the point of conflict is the practice. The question is how to conceive the commitment to human rights as something sustainable. In my visits, I observed difficulty in the application of the programs. Of course, there is a lack of progress in education, activities in secondary school, initiatives that integrate sexual diversity within the school system. They are obsessed with getting these things into the school system. There's actually another statement this guy gave where he was talking about injecting more LGBTI, gender non-binary things into textbooks because children and adults believe things that are written in school books. But I couldn't find it anywhere. It's probably buried 12 months ago in my Facebook. I thought that the African nations brought up a good point. There is no international agreement on the definition of the concept of sexual orientation and gender identity. And the African nations cop it hard with these treaties and things because they're quite often forced to sign up or miss out on different foreign aid and education things and whatnot. And at the moment, family planning have been forcing their way in there. Sorry, not family planning. Planned Parenthood. Alright, down to the bottom. That is why it is so important to start working with the young people. The younger the better, with the politics that amplify empathy for vulnerable populations such as LGBTI people can be. Now, that has all come from the one expert on the UN, which was their, as I said, their rapporteur on LGBT issues and abuse. And I'm going to go across to Mines now, if I can get it to open properly. Because I love Irina Bokova. I should try and use her accent, but I'd do a terrible job of it, so I won't. Okay, so again, we're talking about LGBT issues. We're talking about getting into schools and things, and teaching them young, because young people have got more chance of learning, and adults are just set in their ways. These are powerful tools to fight prejudice, verbal violence and stigmatization that foreshadow physical violence and that violate the equality and inherent dignity of all. This work for reason and tolerance begins on the benches of school, and that is the Director General of UNESCO. In 2016, ministers from 20 countries launched a global call for the education sector to respond effectively to violence based on sexual orientation and gender identity, whether real or perceived. I've got a bit of a thing with this word perceived because it's used in a few bits of policy over here, along with pro-social values. And, well, perceived doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And a bit with pro-social values, whose pro-social values? Because that isn't actually defined anywhere. So far, in all the policy, it'll say pro-social values include honesty and fairness, tolerance, etc. So there's no actual explicit definition there, and that just, as far as I'm concerned, leaves it open to abuse. Some member states have made remarkable progress in implementing these recommendations by monitoring the prevalence of violence in educational settings, by adopting appropriate educational policies, and by providing accurate information on the rights of everyone and how to respond to stereotypes. Yeah, great. The only problem is that they aren't providing accurate information, and they can't even show us where this LGBTI community is actually suffering all this bullying. Now, anyone who knows me knows I advocate for everyone to get any assistance they need. Be that medical, physical, mental health, what have you. One of my big problems with the Safe Schools program was they spent $8 million, and they, in practical terms, according to the Safe Schools Coalition, helped 92 students. Those 92 students were only helped between 9 and 3. They were only concerned with their happiness at school. Only 3 of these children were unsupported by their families, and as far as I'm concerned, every one of those kids could have received personalised, proper attention for those funds, because as far as I'm concerned, our kids aren't haters. Our kids aren't haters. Okay, in 2003, the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child recalled that discrimination based on sexual orientation of teenagers is prohibited. This applies throughout life because human rights are universal, indivisible, and interdependent. Now, that's a statement again by the Director General. But the funny thing is, now I'm not saying it's not there, but I have not come across the word teenager in their documentation that I can recall off the top of my head. And in fact, when I went and actually looked for the definition and age of adolescent, it wasn't on that either. An adolescent is anyone from 10 years old and up, by the way, so when you're reading that documentation, keep that in mind. There's not very much more to go, and then I'll finish babbling and listen and see if this is usable for later. I've got a lot going on, and so this is why everyone's actually getting things that I've actually posted. Gosh, as I said, some of this is over 12 months. 12 months ago I intended to present this, but between my court case and other things and the rally, I just don't have a lot of time to actually put the proper amount of work into a thoroughly researched topic. So, okay, we urge states worldwide to adopt a legal policy framework with comprehensive implementation measures to protect the rights of trans and gender diverse youth, respectful of gender diversity, and to enable the realization of their fullest potential. Of paramount importance are the principles of equality and non-discrimination, right to life, survival and development, best interests of the child, and respect for the child's views. Unfortunately, if you read the Child's Rights Convention, the state decides the best interest of the child, unless what the child wants or the parent wants is in line with what the state says. Anyway, families have a crucial role in creating a safe and loving environment, a safe haven for trans and gender diverse children and adolescents. This is quite obvious, and that counts for kids who are fat, thin, pimply, disabled, and all other things as well. So, I do actually, something else that annoys me is if they would just acknowledge reality, these kids would get more help, because instead of saying, hey, trans is just, one of those things, they'd go, trans is one of those things, you are more inclined to have mental health issues, maybe we should just keep an eye on that a little bit more, see how things go. Face the realities. And my daughter, who I've been quite open, has said she thinks she might be gay. She's too young, and I'm really sick and tired of the friggin' insults over that too, by the way, people. She can feel how she wants. The politics in schools is just absolutely ridiculous. I've listened to these teenagers talking. I'm surprised that she's not more entrenched in the whole Tumblr thingy. Anyway, where was I up to? We call on states to adopt and implement measures prohibiting violence, anti-discrimination laws covering gender identity and expression, real or perceived, as well as sexual orientation. There was actually an article I read the other day about the Uniform Parenting Act in the US. Apparently, they're doing similar to what they've done in the ACT here, and it will now not be a thing to call parents mother and father. anyone who has access to reproduction, what do you call it? Reproduction assistance can be a parent. There's no right to a mother and a father or your genetic history anymore, and I think that's actually a really bad way to go. It's setting people adrift. Rejection leaves trans and gender diverse children and adolescents vulnerable to mental health problems. It leaves all children vulnerable to mental health problems, including feelings of isolation and depression, and can lead to self-harm and suicide. So can a whole lot of other things. Look at the young Akubra girl in Queensland the other week for Australians. A poor little thing. It is therefore crucial to create safe and affirming spaces where these young people can be directly supported to help them address the prejudice and discrimination they may face. Now, we are already seeing cases in Australia where teenagers, we are talking 16 and under, are being assisted to leave home because their parents want to wait and watch. Some of these parents are not against them being, some of them do have issues because they are devoutly Christian and things, but some of them are just concerned that their kids are being rushed into things. And yeah, I know of one child at least that has been assisted to leave home and to go into a halfway house for gender diverse kids. So I just think that's really, really worrying. And there's nothing the parents can do about it because the state said so. And these things are just going to get worse. They're going to start dictating these things more and more. People are going to be more and more scared to raise their own children, to say no to their children, offer them any boundaries and pull them back from those cliff edges. I don't think there's much else to go there. I really just wanted to have a babble. Well, there's heaps. We also call on states to encourage faith-based organisations not to send negative messaging on trans and gender diverse persons. There is also a much welcome link with the Sustainable Development Goals, to which all are committed as the global impetus to ensure peaceful, just and inclusive societies, to leave no one behind. Watch out, anyone who is in a religion that doesn't go along with their Sustainable Development Goals. You're going to be forced to do things you don't want to do. States should thus repeal legislation-related measures that criminalise gender expression and/or affect trans and gender diverse people negatively, and provide accessible and non-discriminatory legal gender recognition procedures without abusive preconditions, including for young transgender people. The statement refers to trans or gender diverse children and adolescents in an inclusive manner to include children and adolescents. So, as I've said, this is birth through to 18. Whose gender identity does not match the sex they were assigned at birth, as well as those for whom their gender identity is not limited to binary concepts of being either a man or a woman, or whose gender expression is not limited to being either masculine or feminine. This includes those who identify with third or alternative genders, or a combination of genders. So there you go. We can be a cat, we can be a dog, we can be a, what do you call those? I forget what they're called. The made-up ones, where they can be dragons and things. What are those ones? So anyway, the experts that made those few comments, the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, the UN Committee Against Torture, the UN independent experts, Mr. Alston, who is the Rapporteur for Poverty and Human Rights, the Rapporteur for the Right to Education, the independent expert on protection against violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Let me just reread that title. Independent expert on protection against violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And I'm just going to say, what are they trying to get recognised as a legitimate sexual orientation? Okay, the Special Rapporteur on the Right to Health, the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, its causes and consequence, and the Working Group on the issue of discrimination against women in law and in practice. The Intra-American Commission on Human Rights, the African Commission on Human Rights, and the Council of Europe Commission of Human Rights. So as you can see, for decades the UN has been writing in that they want to work towards their goals using the children. Adults are just an inconvenient bunch of consumers, using things up and dirtying the planet. making the world a hateful place. Thank you very much, Alicia. I don't have people in here very often. Live streaming's a new thing for me, but I'm practicing talking in public, so this is my practicing talking in public. Okay, so everyone, thanks for listening. I will catch you again soon, probably after I finish putting together my last of my case material. And I might just leave you with Lip Syncer again.
Things that once would raise an eyebrow nowadays wouldn't faze your brow or my brow. Today, if Lady Godiva should come along, men would say she's out of style. Her hair's a mile too long. Golden days, olden days are gone, gone, gone. In olden days, it went a stocking nose, something shocking I heaven knows. Anything goes. Good authors too, who once knew better words, now only use four-letter words, rotten prose. Anything goes. The world has gone mad today, and good's bad today. Black today is white today. The guys today that we prize today are just boys in men's clothes. What good's an urge that's unexpressible? Nature is irrepressible. Heaven knows anything goes. Do you know that I know so many people who can't let themselves go? Cannot let themselves go. Well, you know, I've always believed that he who hesitates is lost. Well, why wait? Now, you just take me, for instance. I eat when I'm hungry, sleep when I'm tired, do what I want to do when I'm inspired. I laugh when I'm happy, cry when I'm sad. Though I'm a lady, I cuss like a fool when I'm mad. I invent things. I smoke when I'm nervous, drink when I'm dry. If some guy looks good to me, I'll give him the eye. No ring on my finger, no every night boast. With me, anything goes. When it behooves me, I sleep in just pajama tops. I'm taking chances, I suppose. Anything goes. But who's to know where my pajama stops when I'm in